Hello everyone, today we are taking a look at two HDZero cameras. These are the Micro and the Nano V3 cameras for the HDZero video system. And by the way, if you don't have one of these USB VTX programmer dongles, they're like 15 bucks from HDZero. I'm sure they're sold other places. Really saves you a lot of time and headache. Also, shout out to Boostin', you know who you are, with some fancy prints. I put these on today. And guess what's back here? And a call out to my favorite shirt. At least my girls love it. Touchdown! First up, the Nano V3 camera weighs 2.19 grams without the backing. And the Micro V3 will also, without its backing, weighs 7.45 grams. Nano camera side to side is 14 millimeters wide by 16 millimeters tall. From the nose to the connector is 16 millimeters. And the lens looks like it's 9 millimeters. As you'd expect, the micro camera is 19 millimeters wide for mounting. A little over 19 tall. Lens is 14 millimeters wide. And from the lens to the back is 23.5 millimeters. I have to interrupt here to issue an apology. I released essentially this video early. I wasn't aware there was a timeline release, so I failed in that regard, and I apologize to anyone who's watching essentially the same video for a second time around, and also to my fellow reviewers, namely Bot Grinder and Johnny 5, that noted that the original video was released early. It was not my intent to subvert anyone else or get views or anything like that. I took it down once I got home and was able to confirm that, yeah, I was in the wrong and I screwed up. So I unlisted that video. Essentially, I'm recreating it here to make sure that I acknowledge my fault, as well as to issue that apology. Again, I am sorry. I didn't intend to swipe any views from anybody or anything like that. One takeaway that I can make with this video is that the number one question that came up in that video, or the most frequently asked question, was, are these 90 FPS cameras? And they are not. Starting off with the Micro V3 camera, this will be for our bigger quads. This V3 has a native 16:9, so it'll fill the screen, especially in your HDZero goggles. I think all the stuff with HDZero has widescreen by default, as far as the displays, whether it's box goggles or otherwise. Again, this is winter time, so our sun does not get directly overhead, but I do what I can to fly in and out of some shadows and some sun, fly directly at the sun from time to time as well. So they list the net weight at 7.5 grams. So that's probably with the screws that go in the backing, as well as the little plastic backing itself. I didn't weigh it that way because it's optional. You might want to put that on in order to secure your cable. I think there are better ways to secure the cable, but that's really up to each person who's doing their own DIY. The image sensor is a 1/2 inch sensor, and its native resolution is 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames per second. I am going to roll through the various camera aspect ratios that the camera supports. You do have to update if you're running a super old version of HDZero firmware. You do need to update it, hence the reason why I mentioned the VTX programmer, the little, I guess you'd call it a USB dongle of some sort. Very handy. Makes it so easy, along with the simple application on the website. You freely download. It's not as though it's behind a gated key or anything like that. It's really simple. But I did notice that it says in the programmer still version 1.2, where 1.5 is our current version. So it looks like some updating needs to happen there. Or possibly I just need to re-download. Maybe I've just got an older copy of it. But I always download the files off the support website and then load them locally through the programmer. I failed to mention it, but a moment ago there we switched to the 4:3 aspect ratio. For those that aren't familiar with HDZero, some of the things that you're seeing on my OSD is very HDZero specific. Like the little quad down by the clock. The batteries on the left-hand side indicating voltage. Those are very HDZero specific, and you can change those if you have the HDZero goggles. Also, the little propeller with the lines indicating spinning that shows the throttle value kind of in the upper left, as well as the fan with a 5 on it. That's my goggle fan. Then you also see a lock pop up from time to time, my goggle battery voltage, as well as the VTX temperature. The stuff that you see across the top, that is very specific to HDZero as well, with the 4 different antennas that we have, as well as the red REC. You will find some of those elements in some of my analog videos, depending upon how closely you're looking at them. The red REC you would see in an analog video, but you would not see the green 8 and the green bars to the right of the red REC. And you would also see the fan with the 5 on it, as well as the voltage, the 2S 3.6 volts per cell. You would see that in some of my analog flights as well, because that's how I keep track of my goggle voltage, because if I don't have it on screen, I end up in a flight session where I only have the one battery charged and ready to go. So it's a good reminder, because I do need to top off my batteries fairly regularly, mainly because I just fly fairly frequently. 16:9 crop, that last segment I've been kind of flying through. I don't know why you would use that, but it was there, and I thought I better show it. There might be one person out there that wants or needs to know, and this is how it looks like on this particular day running through my backyard. But next up, probably something you're going to want to see, which is the night view. So this does tout better nighttime vision, and before we get started, my 3-year-old iPhone, I did kind of a panorama video around the backyard, and even on my iPhone, it's darker than this presents. That's the thing about the camera tech. They can apparently do things that our eyes can't, and they pull in more light and they make everything look brighter. But I wanted to give you some standard of measurement. You know, of course, at some point in time, I'll be upgrading my iPhone, so it'll be a new fancier iPhone. But as for right now, that's a 3-year-old iPhone that I showed you. And then this is the Micro V3 camera just moments later, you know, just long enough for me to get set up to fly. Basically, put the phone back in my pocket and set up to go fly. And we're just going to cruise around the yard. Very, very flyable. I don't have any problems with this at all. I don't know about you, but I think with this particular camera, I prefer the 4.3, but I think that could be because I just fly 4.3 a lot with all the analog flight that I'm doing. We do have some security cameras in the backyard there, so if you're picking up the IR from that, you'll notice that as well. It's Christmas time. There are Christmas lights out. You can see the lights in the house. You can actually see in through the house windows where we don't have any sort of window coverings, and you see the giant Santa across the cul-de-sac, and I love that thing. I need to talk to Ryan and see where he got that. Not that I want to outdo him or do the same thing, but I'm curious how much he had to pay for that thing. Yeah, they didn't have it last year, so I'm just really curious. I love, you know, celebrating fun things. I'm all about that, you know, and if I'd have had the thought and maybe could part with my money, I would have done probably something similar. Maybe we can get a reindeer that's giant, so that he can have he can have the Santa, and then we'll have a reindeer, or Rudolph, I guess is the name of the main character, right? But we're gonna switch through the different video modes on this camera in night view as well. I may run out of things to talk about during this time. I'm trying to go fairly quickly because I know that, well, there's only so much you need to see, because once you've seen the image of the camera, you could probably get your eyes real close to the screen and make your own judgment calls. I really don't try, when it comes to camera reviews or camera showings, I don't really try to insert my own opinion, because most of the time, in my opinion, they just always look better. Every camera iterations look better. And that's kind of the point of a new iteration, right? It should look better. It should have either some feature, whether it's low light performance, or maybe it's got a new resolution it can operate at, or it's got a new frames per second it can operate at, or it has better color or sharpness or contrast. There's always got to be something that a new camera, whether it's HDZero or any other camera, needs to bring to the table. Otherwise, it's not a viable product. But I think many of you have a much better eye at looking at these things and deciding whether it's for you or not. As we start into the Nano V3, the Nano V3 is going to be your whoop camera, so you have kind of a choice to make. One of the things you do need to know is if you weigh these, the V3 comes in slightly more than the V2 does. Not by much, and it's not surprising, because, you know, when you have better image quality, it generally means better optics. It's going to generally mean usually glass in the lens, which glass weighs more than plastic, so that's where some of the weight comes from. The body's also thicker, and we could take a quick peek at these things after we get done and look at the flight footage back at the desk too. I think that could be handy. Unfortunately, I could not find a V2 of the micro camera, so I don't have that to compare to, but there is, you know, always those differences in cameras. And something that you might want to know about the Nano camera, I was surprised at its low light performance. For a camera that does not really talk about its low light performance, yeah, I was just surprised. It does offer a larger field of view on the Nano V3 too. The old Nano V2 was 89 degrees field of view, and the new one is 94. So you get an additional 5 degrees of view. They also tout, and this should be on the website when they launch as well, sharper optics, cleaner colors, greater colors, with a marginal weight difference. So not much of a weight difference to marginal. It depends on how you're managing these things, because one of the things I'm going to have to be careful of is which Nano version do I have? Ooh, that's another really good question. This might be the Nano Lite. Shoot, I don't know off the top of my head which one I'm looking at here. I know you can't see what I'm looking at, but we'll look at them back at the desk. I think it's the Nano Lite that I have. It makes sense that I would buy Nano Lights because of the fact that I'm a micro guy, not looking to get the best optics always. I'm looking to get performance for the most part. So this is very likely the Nano Lite, but I just can't remember off the top of my head. Something else for you to correct me on if I get that wrong in this video. So if you have any questions about something that I might say in this video, check those comments down below. We've got a lot of really knowledgeable people that come to the channel. They keep me straight, and I appreciate them, because in the moment I may not have done all my research on all the videos to make sure everything I say is absolutely correct, because I do freestyle these sorts of videos. I don't script them out. I make a few notes and then I move on with making my videos, and generally it's all about flight and how the flight feel is, and that I'm a little better at remembering. But text and specs and all the different iterations over the years of every little piece of hardware, I'm terrible at that. I can barely keep track of it at all. I can barely keep track of where my wife is half the time. I was texting her earlier asking if she was coming home for dinner before I got back from swim with our oldest daughter, and she told me I am out of town at the board meeting. So I'm like, oh, sorry, honey, I forgot you weren't home. Now this part where we switched over to the full 16:9, I was surprised by this. I've seen this when I think it was in the iGal videos. I started seeing this and I couldn't understand it. And then I saw it on the Infinity Loop stream, and I asked heads that, why would they do that? Because when I look at this as a viewer, this view, this looking through a tube view, it really doesn't attract my eye at all. But in the goggles, it is a weirdly different experience, at least weirdly for me. Maybe I would just head it in with just being such a negative Nelly, but I think when I'm in the goggles, I like this view. So if you haven't tried it and you have the ability with HDZero, try this and see what you think. I just thought the flight was more interesting. It didn't make it didn't like have heavy fisheye or anything to where I was having troubles holding my lines or anything when I started flying this after this particular filming session. Of course, I'm trying to go slow so you can see the image quality, but I just flew it around after I got done, and I was like, I think this might be something. It probably won't make any appearances in my videos because I think it could bother viewers, but when I'm flying casually for myself, I'm going to try this more. This is very interesting to me. I maybe should have led the video with this. This might be the most interesting part of the video, at least for me, is that this full view that has the vignetting, I think is what they call it, where you're looking through a tube. I don't know. I like it. I'm gonna keep trying it until I can find some sort of barrier or some sort of drawback to it. For me personally, I'm going to try that. And I've spent more talking about that than I did any other aspects of the camera. Isn't that a funny thing? We've already jumped into the low light performance. You might call it the nighttime performance as well with the Nano V3 here. Just going to cruise around, do some additional flying so you all can get a take. I was pretty pleasantly surprised with how this camera operated at this time of night. All these flights, I should state, came within, I would say, 25 minutes of each other. Pretty much continual flights, but of course I got two different quads out there, so I have a little bit of setup time between the two different, and then changing, of course, the aspect ratio takes a moment, out of flight, and of course I'm clipping this stuff down as much as I can in order to make the best use of your time. Trying to do a 15-minute review video on two different cameras is a little bit challenging when they offer all these different aspect ratios as well as daytime performance and nighttime performance. But thankfully, it's Christmas time, so we have some Christmas lights out. So at the very least, if you're not into HDZero cameras, you have the opportunity to see some Christmas lights from, well, kind of the backyard perspective when I kind of go above the house over there. This year I didn't put quite as many Christmas lights out as I normally do, mainly because I just ran out of time. I had a special little helper out there, and she was enjoying the time out there, and she got a little bit of a dose of how much time it takes. You got to get all the lights out and everything before you can put them back up. So this is the camera that I was talking about. I wasn't sure if this was the Nano V2 or the Nano Lite. I think it's the Lite, But correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm right, please let me know as well. But I think it's the light version because the Nano V2 I thought was heavier than this. The light version comes in at 1.63 grams. And then, of course, this is the new V3 Nano. And as I was talking about in the video, you know, it's got a bigger lens. It's got a deeper body. As far as the structure goes, that looks to be the same. I know I can measure these things out as well, but it's the same size as the light as far as the square of the body and how it's not square. It's actually slightly rectangular, but you can see the difference in the lens size. This has the Runcam Atom lens in it, just so you know. But it weighs, as I put it previously, now it's slightly less on the scale, not nuclear accurate, 2.18 grams. So the light version, which I believe is the light version, is lighter than this one, but there is an image quality difference as well. And if you made it all this way, I repeat, if you have HDZero, get one of these VTX programmers. It will make your life so much easier because when you update one quad, you need to update them all, right? And there's nothing easier than just USB plug in rather than using the long one from your goggles. As of right now, neither one of these cameras are appearing on the HDZero website, and as the case with most cameras, especially our HD cameras, I expect these to come in probably around that $50 marker, unfortunately. But I was pretty happy with this little guy, the new Nano V3, and I think I'm going to put it back in the Star-Lord. The Star-Lord is one that is my HDZero version of the Rocket Race, because the Rocket Race, if you're not familiar, is one of my favorite analog quads from jax3dprinting.com. He cut the frame, but it's not spaced between the props big enough in order for to have that second layer stack. So I went to the Star-Lord from Jax 3D Printing and put Rocket Race components on that so that I could have an HD version as well. When this launches, if it hasn't launched by the time you're watching this video, I will go ahead and link the product pages to these two cameras down in the video description down below. I think, you know, as time goes by, our cameras are always getting better, but let me know what you thought of these cameras as well as the discussion points that we had during the course of this video. And I'll join you right down there in the comment section. We can have a little discussion about cameras, and maybe you can teach me something about color qualities or sharpness, what to look at, because I just don't pick that up very well. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.